record here and say, welcome. Welcome to the Don't Let Your Hormones Ruin Your Life workshop. And this is something that I love sharing and teaching with people because what I've found is that, hi, Elizabeth. What I've found is that we're not taught about our hormones other than perhaps in elementary school prior to puberty. And everything else in terms of PMS, fertility issues, perimenopause, menopause, all of that tends to get forgotten. And there aren't classes for it because we don't really have a venue to reach all of the adult female population. And so we end up asking our sisters, our mothers, our friends about symptoms, etc. And we learn from them. And what we've learned as a society is that these symptoms are normal. And in reality, they're not. These symptoms are a sign and your body's way of trying to tell you that there's an imbalance and that we don't have to accept them as being normal or being our fate as a woman that we have to suffer through. And we can actually do something about them. So, what I thought I would do to start out with is more people are joining. That's awesome. Hi, Elizabeth. If you're able to come on off video or onto video, I guess, so I can see you, that'd be awesome. Anybody who's able to show up so I can see your face, I love that. Make it more interactive. What I would love to do, just as we're getting started here, is just do a quick poll that you can all complete, just to figure out who's here and why you're here, just as we get started here, so I can make sure that I am serving you in the best way possible today. So I'll give you all a few minutes just to answer those quick questions there. Awesome. I see you've all answered that, so that's super helpful. And I see some of those concerns and why you're here. Awesome. Thank you all for doing that. That's super helpful. So just to introduce myself a little bit as well, my name is Melissa Deely. I am a health coach, an integrative health practitioner, and I'm also trained in NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnotherapy. I call myself the friendly toxin slayer because I work with people to release the toxins in the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies. We have all four bodies. And really, my mission is to help heal the world. We have so much chronic illness in the world today, and many people are left believing that they're going to have that illness for the rest of their life. And the reality is it doesn't have to be that way. There's two main triggers of chronic illness. One of them is the toxic load in our bodies, and the other is nutrient deficiencies and imbalances. And when we rebalance the body and we release the toxins, the body can get to a place where it can heal itself, which is what it's designed to do. And interestingly, many of these, or I shouldn't say many, but these factors are also impacting our hormones. And I love to share this because I just don't want women to suffer unnecessarily. You think about how normal it is to hear in a high school hallway girls complaining about their PMS. And the more that they each hear each other talking about it, they think it's normal to have PMS, and they don't realize it's already a sign of hormonal imbalances. Or women talking about night sweats and hot flashes, insomnia, etc. Again, normalizing it versus realizing this is something we can actually do something about. And so I just want to share a story of mine because I went through this myself. Welcome, Missy, if you can Good to see you there. My experience with my hormones started back when I was about 18. I started getting a migraine right before the onset of each cycle. And that migraine would last 1 or 2 days. And, it was painful, very often would land me in bed. And obviously I didn't enjoy them. But again, I didn't realize that this was a sign of possible imbalance. And I just put up with it. I just thought it was me and there was nothing that I could do about it. This was my lot in life. And it wasn't until a few years later, I'd actually moved from Australia to Canada. And I no longer had access to the same homeopathic remedy for those migraines. And my doctor was wanting to put me on a prescription drug. And I wasn't really sure that I wanted to do that, but there were no other options here in the small town that I lived in. So I accepted the prescription reluctantly with a desire not to use it and to just try to cope with the migraines. However, there came a time where I started getting them 5 days in a row. And I'm like, why am I now getting this migraine 5 days in a row? And I was at my wit's end. I wasn't even able to work. I was leaving work early each day because they got so bad. And I went to the doctor and she just wanted to give me a stronger prescription. And I said to her, but I want to know why. Why are my migraines suddenly worse? Because if I know why, then I could do something about it, right? That was my thinking. And so I didn't take the stronger prescription. What I did was I searched for a naturopathic doctor, and I found that naturopathic doctor who, after doing an hour-long intake with me, suggested that we run some lab tests, some saliva lab tests to see where my hormone levels were at. And I was like, yes, that's what I'm looking for. I want to understand what's happening with my hormones. And we ran that lab test and found out that my progesterone level was very low. And so we were able to then resolve the imbalance in my hormones with a tincture that she gave me to support my progesterone levels. And that resulted in my migraines going away almost entirely for the next 10 years or so. And then when they came back again, I went, aha, I know what this is because I know my hormones are changing throughout my life. And so I went back to the naturopath and I said, I need some more of that tincture that you gave me to support my progesterone. And I did that protocol again. And my migraines were good until I hit perimenopause. And then they came back, but this time they were different. They felt different. They just weren't responding in the same way that I used to be able to handle the migraines. So I went back to the naturopath and said, we need to run a lab test again to see where my hormones are at now. And this time, because I was in perimenopause, my estrogen was low, my progesterone was low, my testosterone was low, everything was low. And so then I had that information and I was able to again support my hormones in order to bring them back into balance so that the migraines went away. And so that is my story in how I've used exactly what I now teach. Because when this all started back when I was 18 and then in my 20s with the 5-day migraine, I wasn't in health and wellness back then. And I didn't know what I know today, but things come full circle. And I now offer that very same lab test that I used back then to assess my hormone levels. That's now what I offer people. But first of all, I'd love you just to answer in the chat since I can't see many of you here. Who would like to feel really good in your body every single day? Just put a yes in the chat if that is you. I've got people coming in here all over the place. And I need to, what's going on? Awesome. And who would like to hear why we develop symptoms of hormonal imbalance so that you can do something about it? Is that important to you? I always feel like if you understand the why, which is why I was asking the doctor why, then you're in a better place to be able to do something about it and make different choices. And you're more likely to stick with those new choices because you know why you're doing them, as opposed to somebody just telling you to do something. And who would like to witness your own symptoms going away, or at least being alleviated significantly? Awesome. So there are actually 10 root causes of hormonal imbalance. And I hope you all have pen and paper handy, because I'll list the 10 for you. And then we're going to dive into just a few of them, because I'd need a full day to dive into all of them. And we don't have a full day here today. So the first one, and I can type them in the chat for you as we go so that you can write them down. The first one is environmental and xenoestrogens. And I'm going to come back to this one and explain it more. For now, I'm just going to do the list for you. The second one is heavy metal toxicity. The third one is an imbalanced gut and digestive issues. We are all interconnected, so we can't separate our different organs and body systems. And that's why an imbalanced gut and digestive issues can actually impact hormones and vice versa. The fourth one is an overwhelmed liver and detox pathways. The fifth one is cortisol effects. Another way of saying that is stress. The sixth one is estrogenic inflammatory foods. And I will point out that those foods are healthy foods. It's just that they're very high in estrogen, and that can have an impact on you and your body and the balance of your hormones if you're sensitive to it. And I will just share a little story about that and me as well as soon as I have this list finished for you. The eighth one is the body fat's effects on estrogen. Number 9 is the birth control rebound effect. And number 10 is menopause effect on hormones, just as the body goes through that change at that stage of our life. So today we're going to be diving into the impact of toxicity as well as stress on our hormones, because these are two that very commonly drive an imbalance in our hormones, and we don't realize it. And when you realize it, you can be making different choices to help rebalance your hormones. But I do want to talk about estrogenic inflammatory foods, and I will give you some food lists later. But just as an example, again, in my own life, it was probably now about 15 years ago. I was visiting my sister who lived in Tokyo, Japan, and she was telling me to stop drinking dairy milk and to drink soy milk, because dairy milk, particularly in the US, has a lot of hormones added simply because they're trying to fatten the cows and have them stay in that state of lactation, and they're using hormones to do that. And as a result, those hormones are in the milk, and then they come through to our body as well, and they impact our own hormones. So there's a lot of research out on that. And so she was saying, stop drinking dairy, you should drink soy milk. So I started ordering my chai tea latte at Starbucks with soy milk. And I don't have Starbucks all the time, but when I'm traveling, it's an easy go-to to have something and a nice little treat in the middle of the afternoon. So there was a few days in a row there where I ordered a soy Starbucks, and I started getting a migraine. And I thought that was strange. And I came home from that trip, and then I had to go to Calgary for a conference, and I was having Starbucks there, the soy latte in the afternoon, and I was getting migraine. And I thought, is it just because I'm exhausted because I've gone from this time zone to home to another time zone? I'm in a different elevation. And I started thinking, maybe I'm just really exhausted and I need to take a break. And when I got home again, a girlfriend said to me, did you know soy is really high in estrogen? And I had no idea that soy was really high in estrogen. And I had a big aha in that moment because remember earlier when I'd done the lab testing, we found out my progesterone levels were low. And I wondered, if soy is really high in estrogen, have I just boosted my estrogen levels to the point where now my body thinks I'm low in progesterone, and I am, relatively speaking, and that's caused the migraines? So I wrote to my naturopath and said, this is what's going on. What do you think? And she wrote back and said, stop drinking the soy, see what happens, which was kind of what was already in my head. And I went, duh, stop drinking the soy. Guess what? Migraines went away. So I realized that my body is very sensitive to the amount of estrogen in soy. And we all have different degrees of sensitivity to different things. We have different degrees of sensitivity to coffee. I'm highly sensitive to coffee, caffeine. I'm less sensitive to sugar. But other people might be less sensitive to coffee, more sensitive to sugar. So it's a matter of also knowing your own body. And I have a favorite saying that your body is your own best lab for testing things, right? So I unknowingly tested soy, stopped it, the migraines went away. That was a really good test laboratory for me, right? So part of this is trying things and learning as we gain knowledge and seeing what works for us and our unique body, because each one of us is very unique. And you're also all your own best doctors because you've lived in your body your entire life and you know your body best of all. And so if you feel like something is off, go and seek the reason why it's off, and also get second opinions. If you're feeling like, I don't like that solution or I don't like that answer, keep looking and don't discount your body trying to talk to you, because your body will never send you astray. It wants you to know something's out of balance so you can do something about it. So let's talk about these toxins, environmental and xenoestrogens. A xenoestrogen is a toxic estrogen, and they are commonly found in skincare products, in plastics, in things that you may be using every day in your life and not realize. And it gets into your body and again elevates your estrogen levels. So your body thinks of it as more estrogen, and that can put your progesterone estrogen level out of balance. There's environmental toxins. In fact, since World War II, we've had 144,000 man-made chemicals introduced into our world. That's a lot. Far more than the human body was ever designed to have to cope with. And as such, our liver is getting overburdened. So this ties in numbers 4 and number 1 and number 2. They're kind of all connected in this toxicity window. And I'm going to share my screen with you just to show you an image of how everyday life is putting pressure on our liver and its ability to function properly. And you might be thinking, what's my liver got to do with my hormones? Well, your liver is charged with excreting your excess estrogen. So the body always wants to be in balance, and it has these mechanisms for helping do that. However, if your liver is already overburdened, it has a much harder time than being able to excrete excess estrogen. So first off, your liver is charged with keeping your body pure and clean, and it cleanses your blood every 6 minutes, all the blood in your body. On top of that, it is charged with excreting toxins, and it does this in 2 phases. And the phase 2 of that toxin excretion is to get the toxins to being water soluble so you can excrete them through your breath, your sweat, your bowels, and your urine. When the liver is getting too bogged down, it's not able to do that as efficiently. Not to mention, it needs very specific nutrients to be able to do that well. And we have depleted soil systems, and we're not getting those nutrients through our food as well as we should be. So our body's struggling. I say that our liver is overburdened and undernourished. And you can see in this graph or this picture all of the reasons that our liver gets overburdened. And that doesn't even mention the xenoestrogens, but that's another factor there. So the other thing is that our liver is very smart. And when it can't excrete our toxins, what it will do is it will store them because it doesn't want them in our bloodstream. So it will store them in our fat closets. And our fat closets are our brain, which is largely made up of fat and water, as well as our breasts. We got a lot of fatty tissue in our breasts. And then anywhere else we're carrying excess weight. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want toxins running around in my head. I don't want them running around in my breasts. Look at all the Alzheimer's and dementia we have out there. Look at all the breast cancer we have out there. We need to get these toxins out of our body. And when we do that, our liver can function properly, which also allows our hormones to be in balance. So another place we get a lot of xenoestrogens is in cosmetic products and all of our personal care products that we put on our skin. And you can see here an example. And really, the average woman is putting on over 200 toxins into her skin that are in the ingredients that you buy in the store. Now, because you buy them in the store, you might think, well, they're safe because they're in the store. And unfortunately, in today's world, that is no longer true. These companies that are producing these products, they don't have to prove that they're safe before they're allowed to sell them. The way the laws work in North America is they're allowed to sell them. And then after that, if there's a problem, it's up to the consumers to be hiring lawyers to be fighting the company to say this product is not safe. So honestly, it is backwards. In Europe, it's not that way. It's the other way around. So their products, they have far fewer toxic products on the market than we have here in North America, where it's a free world and people can sell whatever they want through Walgreens and all the other stores where you do your shopping. And all that's required is that they show that that one ingredient is generally regarded as safe. So they just test one ingredient at a time and show that it's safe. But there's never ever testing of all of the different ingredients that we're using in our daily life, all combined, and how that impacts our human health. That's never been tested. So we are the test subjects, unless we are choosing to ensure that we're buying from companies that are producing clean products that don't have any chemicals in them whatsoever. So those products that you're buying at your local Walgreens, etc., very often will have xenoestrogens in them, which push your estrogen levels up and thereby have your progesterone levels feeling like they're low. And that can result in symptoms of hormonal imbalance, PMS, infertility, perimenopause, and menopause issues. So toxicity is the first one that I want you to know about. I also want to share with you and talk about stress. Because when our body is in a stress state, the brain doesn't know the difference between us having to run away from a lion, as if we were in our hunter-gatherer days, because we're talking about our lizard, our oldest brain. It's still programmed to get you to safety when you're in that fight or flight state. It doesn't know the difference between that and you waking up in the morning and spilling coffee all over the kitchen, and that delays you because you got to clean it up. And then one of your children's having a temper tantrum, and then you get out the door late to go to work and you got to drop the kids at school. And oh, look, there's no gas in the car. Now you got to go to the gas station. And then you're going to work and your boss calls to ask where you're at because he needs to change something in a presentation you have to give at 10 o'clock today. the stacked stresses, right? We all know what that is, right? We've all experienced that. That's when you're in fight or flight and your brain is going, I got to get you to safety. So I'm going to pump your body full of adrenaline, norepinephrine, cortisol, so that you have the ability to flee and get to safety. But your body only has so many resources. So in order for it to be able to do that, it has to shut down other systems, because you can imagine that's a lot of energy that's needed for you to get to safety, right? So it shuts down other systems that use energy. It will shut down your digestive system. Every time you put food in your mouth and your body needs to digest it, that uses 30% of your energy. It will shut down your immune system. It takes a lot of energy to keep you healthy, right? But it shuts it down in the moment. And it will also shut down procreation, because let's face it, if you're running away from a lion, you're not going to stop and eat a sandwich. You're not going to stop and make a baby. You don't need those systems right now. You need to get to safety. And then when you get to safety, your body naturally calms. You get out of fight or flight. You get into your parasympathetic nervous system, and all of those other systems come back online. Except in our modern world, do we ever get to safety? Or do we just keep having stress after stress after stress after stress compounding, and we're spending 80% of our time in fight or flight as opposed to 80% of our time in our parasympathetic nervous system? The reality is, even before the pandemic, the world was the most stressed out it had ever been, and we were spending 80% of our time in fight or flight. And what happens in order for the body to give you that energy and produce that cortisol, we have something called the cortisol steal happening. And that's where the body stops making progesterone in order to be able to produce more cortisol to get you to safety. And if we stay in this state of stress, it's called chronic stress, the body stops making progesterone on a regular basis because it's making cortisol. And that puts your estrogen and your progesterone out of balance because your progesterone plummets. That's what happened to me. That's why my progesterone levels were low. And I needed to support them in coming back up, while also making some lifestyle changes in order to be able to better managing my stress. We're always going to have stress. It also needs to be in balance. So when we know we have more stressful times in our life, we need to actually be increasing our time of self-care to counter that stress. Even if it's 5 minutes, a couple times through the day, to just stop and close our eyes and breathe. But if we stay in chronic stress and we're always up here and we're not managing that, then our progesterone levels stay down and our hormones are out of balance. And then we get symptoms because our body's asking us, what can I do differently? I need to be back in balance. I want you to know that so that you can do something about it. So it's always really good to know where your hormone levels are at, especially once you start to have symptoms, to just run that lab test. And it's not something that we can guess which way the symptoms are. In terms of, if you were to tell me your symptoms, I wouldn't be able to definitively say, oh yes, that means you have high estrogen. This is what we need to do to boost your progesterone. Or maybe this is what we need to do to detox some of that excess estrogen to bring the estrogen down into balance with your progesterone, or a combination of both. Because the symptoms can be very similar either way. And so that's where the lab testing is really, really beneficial, because it tells us exactly where your hormones are at. And if you go to the doctor, they will very often test your hormones with blood. I prefer to test your hormones with saliva, because that shows the unbound, usable hormone available in your body, as opposed to the hormone that's already been excreted into the bloodstream and used. I also, when I run the labs, will test your hormones on days 19 to 21 of your cycle so that I know exactly where you're supposed to be during that time and have that baseline comparison for what your hormones are coming back at in the results. And I'm going to explain that here with this next slide. This is a typical menstrual cycle. Whoops, I want to go back. I need to move my Zoom bar out of the way here. So the first 14 days is known as the follicular phase, and the second 14 days is known as the luteal phase. And at the very beginning of your cycle, day 0 is the day that you start to menstruate. At the very beginning of your cycle, your estrogen and your progesterone are both low. And what happens then is your estrogen starts to go up. And when you get to the middle of your cycle around day 14, that's where your progesterone starts to climb. And so when we're running the lab tests between days 19 and 21, we know the ranges that you should be in if your cycle is in optimal level and your hormones are in balance. When doctors run lab tests for people, what I see often is the blood test, the used hormone, and B, they don't tell you to do it on any particular day. And so if it happens to be at the beginning of your cycle when they draw that blood, well, all of your hormones are low and they're supposed to be low at that point. So then when we get the lab results, though, how do we know if your progesterone is too low or your estrogen is too low? Because we don't really know what day you did the blood work, because they don't ask you to match it to a specific time period of your cycle. And so that's why that is something that's really important to consider, so we can compare where your numbers should be to where you're at. And what we're seeing in today's world with all of this stress and all of these toxins is, as I'm sure you've come to gather now, what we're seeing is people with high estrogen and low progesterone. Does that make sense? So if everybody could just write a yes in the chat that makes sense, you're understanding everything and where I'm at with this, so that you're following me. Awesome, Missy. Anyone else here? You following? It makes sense based on the high toxins and the high stress that most women have high estrogen and lower progesterone levels. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I just want to make sure you're with me for that, because it's really important to understand this. What happens is when we have high estrogen and low progesterone, it's what we call an estrogen dominant state. And an estrogen dominant state has downline health issues that you don't want to have. And so again, understanding this is important, because you can then choose to do things differently now that you have all of this education. So an estrogen dominant state can then start to impact the thyroid. What it will do is slow the functioning of the thyroid and slow your metabolism, hello, weight gain, and potential thyroid issues. 1 in 8 women have thyroid issues. The number in women is much higher than in men, and it's because of this. Secondly, estrogen dominance can lead to type 2 diabetes. It starts to impact the way our insulin system is functioning within our body and put us on that path. And you don't have to be overweight or obese to have type 2 diabetes. It can simply happen as a result of hormone imbalance. Estrogen dominance can also lead to breast cancer. It's a known trigger for breast cancer. Aside from having toxins stored in your fat tissue in your breast, the combination of both is a known trigger. So none of you want any of those things. And so listening to your bodies, understanding symptoms that you're having, and knowing that you can actually do something about it is awesome. And you're all here learning this. And so I absolutely love the fact that you're here. And I know some of you said you're here for proactive education. Yay, because we do need to understand how our bodies work. And then we can make different choices. So I'm going to share my screen again, because the other thing that I want to show you here is what happens as we move into menopause. So as we go into menopause, we've got perimenopause or premenopause, and then postmenopause. That 12 months without a cycle, 12 consecutive months without a cycle is what then allows you to get into postmenopause. Perimenopause can be 8 to 10 years. Postmenopause, we can still have symptoms, even though we don't have a cycle anymore, for another couple of years. So this is quite a significant amount of time in our life, anywhere from, up to like 12 years. During the best time of our life, when we shouldn't have to feel like crap. And part of why we can feel like crap is that when we get into that menopausal stage, our hormone levels drop significantly, very drastically, as you can see by this slide. And what happens is progesterone drops first, and then estrogen will drop. And so again, in that state, we can be in an estrogen dominant state for that time period that we're going through menopause because of the fact that progesterone dropped first. I'm actually going to just stop sharing here for a second, and I'm going to do another poll here because I just want to understand more about symptoms that you all on this call might be experiencing. So I'm going to launch this poll and let you all complete that. I'll just give you another couple minutes. I can see 6 of 8 have finished the poll. Well, Liz said you're not seeing a poll. That's strange. Can you see it now, Liz? I don't know how to. Oh, perfect. I'm glad you got it. Okay. I see 7 of you were done. I'll give it another few seconds. I'm not sure if. Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for participating. So here are the results. So changes in mood, poor sleep, insomnia, by almost half of you for that one. Some of you, one of you with hot flashes, some of you night sweats, weight gain, brain fog for the majority, memory issues, poor recall for half of you, vaginal dryness, low libido for almost half of you, and abnormal cycle and overwhelm. So some of those symptoms you might not even have realized correlate to hormonal changes. Some of them are pretty obvious, but maybe not all of them. Did you know brain fog, memory issues, poor recall, overwhelm can be impacted by your hormones? Just type a yes or a no in the chat. Well, that's awesome. Some of you say yes, some of you say no. So, yeah. So, as I said earlier, these symptoms can go either way with low progesterone or low estrogen. And so we don't want to guess. We really need to understand exactly where your levels are at in order to then be able to use plant-based herbs to support your body coming back into balance, as I did with that tincture, as well as food as well as managing stress. Because we can balance our hormones all we like. If the stress isn't managed, we're just going to be constantly triggering that imbalance again. So stress is a key factor in that. And another piece of that I want to share with you is sleep. Because when we get the right amount of sleep, we become much more stress resilient during our day. When we get the right amount of sleep, we also are looking after the health of our gut and microbiome and digestive issues. Because when we don't get enough sleep, we have a breakdown in the healthy microbes in our gut. And when we do get enough sleep, that doesn't happen. And remember, imbalanced gut and digestive issues were another of the root causes of hormonal imbalance. Now, with sleep, as humans, we all should be getting between 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. If you're feeling unwell, you feel like you're coming down with something, that's going to be closer to 9 hours. If you're feeling healthy, strong, good energy, I have a cat coming to visit me that I'm actually going to have to take out. Just give me 1 second, because otherwise he's going to walk in front of the screen for the next half hour, aren't you? Come on, buddy, out. Sorry, he's trying to tell me it's lunchtime, but he's early. So with sleep, we need to be getting 7 hours minimum if we're feeling good energy and healthy, right? And a lot of people are surviving on less than 7 hours every night. And every night that we survive on less than 7 hours, we're actually negatively impacting the health of our gut and negatively impacting our ability to handle stress. Let's face it, when we're tired, it's really easy to get irritated, to yell, to react, right? We get triggered easily. When we're not tired, we're able to manage those stresses daily life throws our way. And I like showing this graph for people because the timing of when we get those 7 hours to 9 hours is also important. And a lot of people will say, I'm a night owl. They'll stay up past midnight. And I know there's people with shift work, and so this doesn't apply to you because shift work really complicates this. But for the average person who's working at, a 9-to-5 job or has a 9-to-5 career or business, I would love to ask you to think about planning your sleep around the time you need to wake up in the morning in order to be at your desk or your work, and work backwards from there. Because so often what we do is we don't plan our sleep. We try to get as much done as we can in every single day. And then it's one more thing we got to get done, one more thing we got to get done before we go to bed. And then we fall into bed exhausted, having squeezed out our sleep window, and we're not getting enough sleep. Depending how late we've eaten and what we've consumed that day, how much caffeine, we might fall into bed physically exhausted, but mentally we're still awake and we're still not falling asleep either. So this chart shows you why humans should go to bed between the hours of 9 and 11 for your 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And again, it's based on hormones. We are creatures we're animals, basically, just like animals, and we're impacted by our day and night cycles. So we don't have night vision, so we sleep at night. That's safer for us. We have to be awake during the day. Therefore, our bodies produce melatonin. It starts producing it around 9 p.m., and our peak melatonin is around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m., and we need melatonin to get into a deep restorative sleep, and our deep sleep always happens in that first part of the night. And melatonin and cortisol are inverse hormones. Cortisol is lowest at that time, and it starts to rise around 4 to 5 a.m., and it's at its peak between 6 and 8 a.m. because it's giving us the energy to wake up and start our day. So we need to go to bed when cortisol is at its lowest and melatonin is at its highest for us to get good quality sleep. So that means going to bed between 9, 10, and 11, really. You can see the dip in cortisol is probably about 10 p.m., 10, 11 p.m., and sleep for 7 to 9 hours. And when we do that, that's allowing our body to be in our rest and digest, our parasympathetic nervous system for longer. It allows us to be more stress resilient during the day. And that helps keep all of our other hormones in balance too. But let's come back to cortisol again, because we want cortisol to be really low in the evening so we can get to sleep. However, if we're still stuck in that chronic fight or flight, what's happening? Our cortisol isn't dipping. It's too high, which means our melatonin, because it's the inverse hormone, can't be produced to the degree that it should be. And that then starts negatively impacting our sleep. So I'm just going to stop sharing here. And again, can you just put a yes in the chat that you're all with me? That all makes sense. I know you've probably heard that you need 7 to 9 hours of sleep before. However, does this make more sense? And do you have a greater understanding of why? Excellent. There's other factors that are impacting our cortisol levels as well. And I'm just going to give you one more as a quick bonus tip here today. And I'm sure many of you have kids, and this is going to be, yes, if your cortisol is high, that is impacting your sleep, because we need cortisol to be low at bedtime. And if it's too high, we're not going to we're going to have a harder time falling asleep, and we're not going to get into a deep enough sleep. You can take melatonin to balance. So melatonin isn't going to reduce cortisol, it's going to help balance. And so yes, taking melatonin at bedtime is something that can be very helpful. Absolutely. You want to make sure that you're taking one that isn't drowsy. Some melatonins can have you waking up feeling drowsy. And I do have recommendations of some good quality melatonin. If anybody is interested in that, I can share that. But even before I go there, I was just going to talk about a bonus tip in terms of cortisol. Blue light. Blue light is the light that we get into our eyes from the sun. So that tells our brain that it's time to be awake and energetic and doing things, right? We also get blue light from our screens, our devices, our phones, our tablets, our TVs, our computers. And what happens is that if we're getting that blue light into our eyes in the evening, that doesn't tell our brain to start producing melatonin, because we're going to be going to bed soon. You saw that, it peaked at 3 a.m., but it started rising before that on that last graph. So our brain doesn't know to start producing melatonin. Now, back in the hunter-gatherer days, dusk told the brain to start producing melatonin. Now, with all the lights and electricity, et cetera, the brain no longer knows, because it can't tell the difference. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to block blue light, because for every hour you are on a device in the evening with blue light coming into your eyes, it will stop melatonin production for another 30 minutes after you get off that device. So think about your evenings. How much time is spent on a computer, on a phone, watching television? It could easily be 3 hours, right? So if you're turning off the TV and then going upstairs and brushing your teeth and putting your pajamas on and falling into bed, but you've just watched TV for 2 hours, your body's not produced melatonin during that time, and it won't produce it for another hour after that, which means it's that much harder for you to get into a deep restorative sleep without that melatonin. So you can block blue light with blue light blocking glasses. You can buy them on Amazon. They're on my website under my recommendations. So go to resources on my website, and then under that, my recommendations, you'll find the example of the blue light blocking glasses that I use for watching television. On your devices, my phone, I have an Apple, but even if you have an Android, you can go into settings and you can turn on night shift. So mine turns on at 7 p.m., goes from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. right now, and it turns to a yellow light. because a yellow light doesn't block the production of melatonin like a blue light does. On my computer, I have something called Just Get Flux, and I'll just actually pull that website up for you and drop it in the chat. Just Get Flux, and this is a free download that you can put on your computer, and it will also block blue light and turn it to yellow light. It has GPS within it, so when I travel, it automatically knows I've traveled to somewhere new, and it gives me a pop-up. It looks like you're at these coordinates. Do you want me to change the timing? And I say yes. So it's very helpful because then I know when I am on my computer in the evening that I'm not getting that blue light in my eyes. I will warn you, because it's all ladies here, do not go clothes shopping in the evening with your yellow light turned on, because it skews the color of the clothing and you'll get something in the mail that isn't the color that you thought it was when you ordered it. So I learned that the hard way, just giving you the heads up. What would be the best time? I take melatonin right before bed, literally right before bed. It's on my bedside table. Melatonin is actually fabulous. I take a really low dose because you never want to take more of something than you need to. So I just take the lowest dose, one spray. Excellent for helping produce melatonin, but just also in terms of aging and longevity, it's really good to be keeping our melatonin levels at a good level. And so, yes, I take it right before bed. And as I said, I have it right on my bedside table. If I have blue light blocking in my prescription eyeglasses, is that sufficient? No, if it's in your prescription eyeglasses and you're always wearing your eyeglasses, then that is sufficient. And that's great, Amanda. Awesome. So we've talked about how our hormones get out of balance now. And we talked about some of the key reasons. I know I gave you a list of 10, but we've talked about the two biggest ones that you have the most control over: toxicity levels and stress and the impact on cortisol. So now you know how you got here. What do you now need to do in order to counter this? And how can you start to make this a lifestyle so that you can be managing it? So first off, one of the easiest things that you can be doing is managing that stress. We all know when we start to feel stress, we feel it kind of rise in our body, right? Or we feel it in our gut. And one of the things that I love to teach is something just called 5-5-7 breathing. We have our breath with us everywhere we go. It's absolutely free. And this takes less than 5 minutes. And you can do it anywhere. You can do it in the night if you wake up and you can't fall back to sleep. Guess what? You need to be in your parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system to fall asleep. You can do it in the car if you're frustrated by traffic. You can do it in the office. Maybe there's been some kind of altercation at the office and you're just feeling stressed out. You can just go into the washroom and do some breathing, or go sit in your office and do some breathing. You can do this in a restaurant before you have a meal, just to do a check-in and make sure that your digestive system is turned on before you start eating and that you're not in a stress state, because having digestion turned on before eating is also really important, because that gets your stomach acid flowing and your digestive enzymes flowing, and it has your digestion working well. So what is 5-5-7 breathing? It is literally breathing in for a count of 5, holding your breath for a count of 5, and breathing out for a count of 7. And we do this for 10 cycles in a row. And the brain goes, I thought I was stressed out, but I'm breathing like a safe person. I must be safe. And it will drop you into your parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system and get you out of that fight or flight and stop the cortisol pumping through your body. So I know I can't see most of you here, but I really appreciate you've been interactive all the way through. So I would love to invite us just to all do a very quick round of this so that you can experience it. And then you can let me know. We're just going to do 5 rounds. We're not even going to do 10. just so that you can experience it. And then afterwards, I want you to type in the chat the difference in how that made you feel. So I want to invite all of you, as long as no one's driving, to just close your eyes, kind of sit in your chair and get a little bit extra comfy. And I'm going to count you through. So if everyone can exhale together and inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now you can open your eyes. And I'd love you just to type in the chat. How do you feel now versus before? Yeah, spontaneous yawns, very relaxing. Relaxed, nice. Sometimes we do that, and because we don't allow ourselves enough time to relax, sometimes we get there and we're like, I don't want to come back. That was really nice. So yeah, that was only 5 rounds. So if you did that for twice as long, it still only took us like 3 minutes. Notice how it just brings your body down into that parasympathetic nervous state. And yes, and easier to think, absolutely. Because when we're in that stressed out state, we can't focus. The brain is just going ping, 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 ping. And there's too much going on. And that's when we get into that overwhelm. And when we calm and we get out of that, yes, we have much more mental clarity and ability to focus. So why is that so effective? Well, it's so effective because the exhale is longer than the inhale. You might have heard of box breathing, very common yoga breathing style, like you inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. It has its benefits too. But the reason I love this particular one, 5, 5, 7 breathing, is because that exhale is longer than the inhale. And the reason that triggers the brain to go, I must be safe, I'm breathing like a safe person, is because if you were running away from a lion or a tiger, you would be running and your arms would be pumping and you would be panting. There's no way your exhale would be longer than your inhale. And so that's what lets your brain know that you're safe and it can get into your parasympathetic nervous system. What is also really effective there is that when you're counting that, like I'll count this in my head, 5, 5, 7, but then I have to count the number of rounds. So for me, I have to count that on my fingers, right? Because I can't do the 5, 5, 7 and the number of rounds in my head. I lose track. But all of that counting allows me to also forget about whatever it was that was keeping me in a stressed state with the thoughts running through my mind. So it's distracting those thoughts and putting them away. And so again, that's another reason why this is very effective at helping us calm. And as I said, it's completely free and we can do it absolutely anywhere. I see you had a question earlier, and if you have a lot of estrogen built up in your body fat, does that affect your progesterone levels, or is it locked away? So yes, it does. It's still putting you into an estrogen dominant state because that estrogen is still in the body and the body knows that. And it can then trigger some of those issues down the line. So we do need to support the body in releasing that estrogen and in increasing progesterone levels. And it's also why when we lose weight, that it's also important that we lose weight in a safe way, because our body fat that we're releasing has toxicity to it. And we don't want to just flood the system with that toxicity, which actually leads me to my next point, which the starting point when I work with clients is starting everyone with a detox. Because we've had those 144,000 man-made chemicals introduced, because our liver is overwhelmed, what we want to do is clear that out. I liken it to an overflowing trash can in a city park. We've all seen that. And if you take something healthy and you put it on top of that overflowing trash can, it doesn't get where you want it down inside. It just plops onto the ground next to the trash can. So before spending money on rebalancing protocols, I want to make sure that the goodness of those rebalancing protocols is getting to the cells in your body that need it. And in order for that to happen, we have to clear out all the garbage first, right? So we do a functional medicine 21-day detox that is very, very powerful at clearing all of your pathways and helping your body flush all those toxins out. And a big part of why that's so effective is that we're giving you the nutrients for phase 2 of detoxification that you're not getting through your average everyday diet because it's no longer in our soil systems. So that allows you to release all the toxins. It's like picking up that trash can and dumping it out. And now it's an empty trash can. And that's what we want, so that when we then start to put in the healing rebalancing protocols, that it gets to the cells that need it in order for you to get results more quickly. You could still get results the other way, but I find it takes much longer because only a portion of the healing protocol is actually getting to the cells, and the rest of it's getting mixed up in the mush and the sludge, and it's just not getting where it needs to go. So that's how I work with every single client in order to get my clients to get the results they want and get them as quickly as possible. So we start with a detox and then we run the labs. Many people will find just the detox is enough to make their symptoms go away because they're at a place where their symptoms aren't too far out of balance and they just need it to help their body get rid of that excess estrogen. And their symptoms go away. And that's wonderful. For those who still have symptoms, which can still be the case in some people, we will then run a lab test, that very same lab test that I ran all those years ago. And I'm just going to share my screen so you can see what this lab test looks like. So this lab test is basically it's a 4-in-1 lab test. It's both saliva and blood. We use saliva to assess the estrogen and progesterone level. That will then give us that ratio of progesterone to estrogen so we know whether we're in an estrogen dominant state. It will also test our testosterone level and our DHEA. DHEA is a precursor to both testosterone and estrogen. And very often, if I see estrogen low, testosterone low, DHEA low, rather than giving you estrogen or testosterone, I will give you DHEA. It's very cheap. Unfortunately, you can't get it in Canada. If there's any Canadians on here, I don't know why the Canadian government doesn't allow it, but they don't. But in the US, you can get it. It's very inexpensive, and it will help to not only boost the DHEA level, but also testosterone and estrogen, and your body is doing the work. So we're not giving you something like in hormone replacement therapy when once you start on that, you have to keep taking it for a very, very long time because the body goes, oh, you're giving it to me. I don't have to make it anymore. We don't want to do that. We want the body to do what the body should naturally do. And so giving DHEA is a really powerful way to do that. And using plant-based herbs is also going to do that as well, because the body is then converting those herbs and using that. And that's what's boosting estrogen or progesterone, whichever way we're trying to go. This lab also shows cortisol 4 times through the day. So upon waking, at lunch, at dinner, and at bed. So we can see if your cortisol rhythm is where it should be based on just us being natural creatures and needing our cortisol to be highest in the morning and lowest at night. We then use blood to assess the thyroid, because remember I said estrogen dominance can impact the thyroid. So we want to look at that and make sure that your thyroid is functioning well. And it will show us TSH and free T3 and free T4 and your TPO antibodies. Now, I know on this example, it's only showing TSH, but the lab that I actually offer has all of those, which you don't typically get through your PCP. And that's helpful too, because we get to see early warning signs of a slowing thyroid, so we can take action before there's ever any need for any kind of prescription medication. It will show us our insulin levels and our 90-day fasted, because remember again, estrogen dominance can put us on the path of type 2 diabetes. We don't want that, so we want to do a check-in. Where are your insulin markers? And make sure that they're where they want to be. Or again, we can intervene with early signs of them going sideways before there's any kind of diagnosis down the line. And lastly, we also get a vitamin D assessment on this lab as well. And vitamin D is excellent for immune health, for bone and teeth health, brain health, and it's critical in helping balance our hormones. So in this one lab, you're getting all of that information, which then allows us to see where's your stress at, where are your hormones at, where's your thyroid at, where are your insulin markers at, where's vitamin D at, so we can help bring the body back into balance. So we address those markers with plant-based medicines. So rather than just going straight to hormone replacement therapy, which is what the medical world will do, as I said, that results in you using it for a very long time, because the body literally stops producing progesterone and estrogen when you give it to the body. And instead, we want to be using plant-based herbs and foods, etc., in order to help the body do what it does best when we bring it into an environment where it can actually do that. Does progesterone get stored in the body fat too? It's the xenoestrogens are what are getting stored in the body fat, and progesterone is not stored in the body the way those xenoestrogens are, because those are the toxic ones that the body has a harder time getting rid of. So the estrogen will still stay high, but the progesterone doesn't get stored the way the xenoestrogens do, to answer your question, Anne. So I just want to check in. Does anybody have any questions about that lab that you want to write in the chat? And is everybody with me? Does all of that make sense as to why we would run a lab that includes all of that information? And do you understand how it's all so interconnected? Is all of this making sense? Awesome. Thank you, Janet. And Elizabeth, I'm glad you're following along. Yep, perfect. Liz? So I want to give you a list of high progesterone foods that you can write down. It is a lot to keep straight, Missy. I'm here to support you though. I know it's a lot. I am recording this. I will send it out. You can all come and watch it again as well. And I'm glad, Anne, that you understand a lot more now. I'm very happy to hear that. That's why I do these sessions. So I'm going to give you a list of high progesterone foods, just so that you have it. Now, if you have high progesterone, these are not foods that I would recommend you eat a lot of. You'll notice they're all healthy foods. If you have low progesterone, then these are foods that we would use to help boost your progesterone levels and bring your hormones back into balance. Because clinically, 95% of people have low progesterone, is what I see, versus their estrogen. I'm sharing this with you. However, I would love for all of you, run your lab, see where your numbers are at. And then from there, you have that baseline as well. Remember, I did it first and realized my progesterone levels were really low. And then later things changed as I went through menopause, and I ran it again. So I got new information, and that guided me to take different actions. But even if you don't have symptoms now, or you just have minor symptoms, almost all of you had some symptoms there, run it now to see where things are at. Let's balance that out. What if we could get rid of the mood changes and the overwhelm and the brain fog and the memory recall issues and the night sweats and simply by running the lab and taking some action now before you're in the thick of really feeling like crap. Because anytime we act sooner, it's faster to resolve the issue than if we wait until we're in the thick of it. It takes longer to rebalance the hormones. Anyway, and you're welcome, Janet. And that's why I do this. I want more people to know this ahead of time. And I am running this workshop again on October 25th. So if you guys enjoyed this and you want to share it with others, I can actually drop the link. I'll do that now. Drop the link in the chat in case you want to share it with other people that might like to come again on October 25th. Perhaps you have friends, sisters, siblings that might like to attend. They can sign up here. There you go. So I'm going to give you the list of high progesterone promoting foods. So first of all, bananas. I'll write these in the chat again so you can write them down. Cabbage, shellfish, sardines and salmon, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, kale, spinach, oats, quinoa. I should put other cruciferous vegetables. And then there's a few, so pumpkin, but not the seeds, so the actual pumpkin. And then there's a few others. So there's nuts, except there are nuts that also have estrogen in them. And then there's walnuts, which contain both estrogen and progesterone, and beans can go either way as well. So I'm not going to put those on the list. All of these here are high progesterone promoting foods and can be very, very helpful in rebalancing our hormones if we know that we're low in progesterone. So, and you had another question, how does the imbalanced gut digestive issues affect hormone levels? So what happens is that high cortisol is also negatively impacting our gut, in that when we're in that stress state, digestion is not turned on. So we are not producing stomach acid, we're not producing enzymes, which means our body is struggling to break down our food properly. It's also killing off our good microbes. And so our imbalanced hormones can negatively impact our gut. And it can work the other way around as well, because 80% of our immune system is housed in our gut. And if our immune system isn't functioning properly, that can lead to higher inflammation, which can then trigger imbalances throughout the body in terms of our hormones and our omega-3 levels, everything getting out of whack. So it's kind of the chicken and the egg, right? The unhappy gut can negatively impact our hormones through stress, and the other way around as well. And that's the quickest way I can answer it here, Anne, because I don't have time to go into it in depth, but there is that correlation between the unhappy gut and hormones and vice versa. And Janet, that's awesome. Glad your progesterone levels are good and that you are eating most of these foods. That's fabulous. So in terms of what next, I would love to share with all of you my Discover Your Toxic Load quiz, and I'm dropping it here in the chat for you. You can take that quiz. It's probably take you about 10 minutes, so we don't have time to do it right now on the call. Glad that answered your question, Anne. But I would love to invite all of you to go and take that quiz. The answers, it's very quick, like it's just asking about symptoms. And what happens is very often we ignore our symptoms. Society's taught us to ignore them, to push through, we write it off as, oh, it's aging, or we say, oh, it's menopause, oh, it's PMS. We write it off as seasonal allergies. We write it off as our genetics, and we don't pay attention to our symptoms. And so this quiz is designed to kind of bring those symptoms to top of mind for you, to how often are you experiencing them? And then at the end, you're going to get a score. And it's a range, because the answers you'll find as you do it, there's no perfect answer. So you're going to just do your best to answer each question as to what's most applicable to you. And then you're going to get a range. And that range will show whether your toxicity level is mild, moderate, severe, or extreme. And it doesn't matter where you are on that spectrum. What matters is that you know that you're there, and you know that how toxins are impacting your body, and that you now can choose to do something about it. And knowing that the toxins are impacting your body, and understanding how that's then impacting your hormones, it's impacting your gut, et cetera, et cetera. And that if you want to do something about all of this, you want to first release the toxins and then start rebalancing the hormones. So take that quiz, and then you do get an invitation to book into my calendar to have a conversation with me, and we can talk about what's going on for you and what are the next best steps for you. And there's no charge for that call. It's just a discovery call so that we can chat and see. Hopefully you're taking away some good tips from today's session. And in that call, you're going to get more that will help you. And you will have a better idea about your personal next steps forward. I also have here my next health kickstart will be in January of 2024. So that's where I teach a 5-week program. And within that is a 21-day detox, so that you're guided all the way through every step of the way, fully supported. And I set you up for success in week 1. Week 2 is all about nutrition and the right way to eat for your body. Week 3 is all about digestion and understanding how to optimize digestion so your body's actually getting the nutrients from what you're eating. Week 4 is how not to retox after your detox, because you haven't just done all of that detoxing to go back to the way things were. And week 5 is sugar, because it's in everything. And as I said, for some people, just doing that program is enough to rebalance hormones and have you be free of your symptoms. And for others, you might want to run labs and take that next step to see exactly where your hormones are at and work on rebalancing them before your symptoms get to a point where you're really struggling and not enjoying life because you're not sleeping well and you're just fed up with night sweats and hot flashes and all of these things. The other piece that I haven't really addressed here today is fertility. There's a lot of women struggling with fertility in our world today, and I don't know if that applies to any of you here. However, one big reason that many women are struggling to get pregnant is because their progesterone levels are too low. And we've talked today about how and why our progesterone levels get too low. So you all understand that now. But that's happening in our 20-somethings and our 30-somethings. It's not something that's just impacting women in perimenopause and menopause. It's happening in a younger age because of the high stress that people are under. And if we don't have progesterone in our body, we can't hold that pregnancy. And so it ends up in early miscarriages, which is heartbreaking for people. And some of you might have gone through that. I know I've gone through that. But people that are having, 2 and 3 miscarriages, I'd be wanting to say, hey, let's run a lab. Let's see where your progesterone levels are at. Let's rebalance your hormones before we try this again. So you don't have to have this ongoing heartache. Without that progesterone, that pregnancy can't be held because there's nothing there to help sustain the life in the womb and nourish the baby. So it's absolutely critical. And I just wanted you to be aware of that because you may all know people in your life that are struggling with fertility, and it's something that we can address using all of this same information that I've shared with you today. So is there a specific name for the saliva and blood test that you talked about? Yes, it's on my website, Anne. And these, by the way, are sent, the ones that I offer are sent to your home. So you do them at home. You don't have to go to a clinic. You don't have to go anywhere to book these labs. They literally get mailed to your home. And then you send the results in to the lab and I get the results and I then review them with you over Zoom. So my entire business is online. And I'm just going to drop all the labs that I offer are here. You can't buy them from that website. You do need a special passcode in order to be able to buy them. And you have to have somebody that can read the lab for you because the lab is only as good as you getting the information out of it and knowing what it means. So if you're interested in the labs, please do book a call with me because we can chat and then I can give you the actual link to buy the lab and the passcode to access the site so that you can then do that. And you would be putting in my name as the person that would be reading that lab for you. And the name of that specific lab on the website link I just dropped in is called the Complete. I'm scrolling down because they changed them. We use different acronyms, the old ones. The Complete Stress, Mood, Hormones, and Metabolism Test. I'll copy this for you. That's the one that you're looking for on the website there. Who asked that question? Anne asked that question, and Janet. You talk to your doctor and they do not have the understanding of how certain symptoms relate to hormones unless you find a good one who does. Yes, because unfortunately, a lot of our PCPs and the way the doctors are taught in medical school is they're taught organ by organ and system by system, and they don't have that correlation of how one affects the other. And it's in holistic health where we're looking at that. And, I run a hair tissue mineral analysis test to look at metal toxicities in the body. And it also looks at electrolytes and all of our minerals, and they need to be in balance too. Everything in the body just wants to be in balance. And those 4 electrolytes are a really good clue to someone's indication of cardiovascular disease. I also run an inflammatory lab test between omega-3s and omega-6s to see what the inflammation level is in the body. Again, a really good clue as to someone's potential risk of cardiovascular disease and easy ways to resolve it. I don't diagnose anything. I'm literally looking for the imbalances and the toxicities. I remove the toxins, rebalance those imbalances, and the body will take over and heal itself. So I'm not a doctor. I don't diagnose. I don't cure. As an integrative health practitioner, as I said, I'm just looking for those toxicities and imbalances. And we resolve that and the symptoms go away and you feel awesome. And we extend your longevity as well, because my focus is not on lifespan, it's on health span. I want people to have a vital long life right to the end and not be spending 10 years in a nursing home, which is what the average American is experiencing right now. Because once you go in that nursing home, you don't get out. And when you're in there, it's not really quality of life. And it doesn't have to be that way when we learn all of the things that we can do in proactively looking after our body. So I thank you all for being here and sticking with me throughout. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that you were all super interactive and I saw comments that you learned a lot. So thank you. And please take the Discover Your Toxic Load quiz, book a call with me. I am flying to Florida tonight. I'm going to a conference with my mentor until Saturday, and then I'm taking next week off to visit friends on the East Coast, and then I will be back. So if you're booking into my calendar, nothing's available till October 24th. That's why, but I look forward to chatting to you upon my return. And thank you again for being here, and you will get an email with a copy of this recording. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.